The Dallas Cowboys got a thrilling overtime win in week 2, but it comes with big concerns. We'll break them down next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we are talking about the Cowboys' 40-37 win over the New York Giants in week 2. On Friday's show, Landon, I said the Cowboys are going to have to score at least 27 points to win. I was wrong. They needed 40.
It was crazy. Yeah, I mean, we'll get into all of it, but I don't think any of us, I mean, certainly not us, anticipated the kind of offensive output from the New York Giants that they did. Obviously, a lot of that speaks to the state of the Cowboys defense, but we'll dive into all of it as we go along. So
we're going to get into some of the defensive concerns. We'll get into a player they signed as soon as the game was over, who they're absolutely going to need because of what happened. But I want to start with the offense. You and I were talking pre-show about how bad this offense looked in the first quarter. Landon, you said they ran 10 total plays in the first quarter. The scoring picked up a little bit in the second quarter. And then to start the third quarter, they had an interception. Everything just felt so clunky. But in the fourth quarter, they scored 20 points. In overtime, they kicked the game-winning field goal. Things picked up. Why did it take them so long to get started?
Yeah, I mean, it just really felt like, well, first of all, for the offense, you can't really speak to this without kind of at least dipping into the fact that the Cowboys defense was on the field for almost the entire first quarter. You talked about the 10 snaps, but it's not even just the snaps. I mean, it was just that for the first, I think, almost 9 minutes of the game, the Cowboys offense didn't even get on the field. So, and then when they got on the field, it felt like it was a little bit clunky. They had that whole situation with where they got into a 3rd and 1 situation. Then they tried to run the sneak that they kind of mistimed a little bit, which, by the way, I like the concept of faking that you're faking a short yardage thing. You just gotta, snap the ball on time to make sure it works properly. But even after that, like, it just felt like things were a little bit disjointed, a little bit clunky. We saw a couple more drops. It felt like the Cowboys were struggling to get their targets to CeeDee Lamb and to Pickens the way they wanted to. And just opportunity was one thing for sure, but then it felt like when they did get the ball early in the game, they were pressing. They weren't able to kind of get the movement in the run game that they want. It just felt like everything was difficult, in a way that it certainly loosened up as the game went on.
Yeah, so starting, I'm going to go the 10-minute mark in the third quarter. Listen to these Cowboy drives. 6 plays, 90 yards, touchdown. 11 plays, 56 yards, field goal. 10 plays, 85 yards, touchdown. 11 plays, 71 yards, touchdown. 4 plays, 21 yards, field goal. That's the Brandon Aubrey 64-yard field goal. And then they got the field goal in overtime. Like, the offense really started to click in the second half. It's just, we've got to find ways for this to be throughout the game, because last week, Landon, it was the first 2 drives of the game, up and down the field touchdowns. The Cowboys scored on every drive in the first half. And then the second half, they didn't score. This week, it was the first half where they started out really slow and then things picked up in the second half. Can they ever put together a full game? Listen, I understand you're not going to have a game where you score on every single drive, but it would be nice to see them be a little bit more balanced than what we've seen over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think, part of it was just lack of opportunity. It felt like they couldn't convert in that first series. They got the ball. And then after that, it just felt like they struggled to find good targets for their key players. I think that if I remember, CeeDee Lamb ended the first half with only like 4 targets in the entire half. He ended the game with 11 targets. So they clearly doubled that up to get to the second half, right? To get through the rest of the game. I think as the game kind of went on, they made adjustments to the coverage that was being played against them. And then you started to see not just the kind of DPI offense that you were getting from Pickens at a certain point, but actually completing passes to Pickens, right? And then completing passes to CeeDee Lamb down the field. So I just felt like early on, They struggled. They weren't necessarily trusting their tackles, right? They were trying to do a lot of short passing stuff early, and then it was a lot of kind of contested catch stuff. There weren't guys like running widely open. And then as the game went on, it felt like guys were able to break free a little bit more. They started throwing the ball a little bit further down the field, which I think helped guys like CD and Pickens shake loose a little bit more. And I think those early, first half targets to Ferguson, I think loosened things up a little bit more on the outside. And once it did, they were starting to hit them more with the kind of out routes, the crossing stuff, and the kind of deep 9 stuff to Pickens that even when they weren't completing it, they were getting very obvious deep. I mean, I was worried. I was worried about them just basically running out of defensive pass interference calls that the rest would just stop calling them at a certain point. But they were all so egregious that I was like, oh, well, I mean, there's no way they're not.
You kind of have to. Yeah. They're all wide out in the open, right?
Yeah. I think, part of the issue is that, like we said, the Cowboys got the ball for such a short amount of time in the first quarter. They couldn't quite figure out the way that the Giants were playing them just because they didn't get a lot of looks. And I think as the game got on, as they saw how they were being played, as they saw the kind of schematic way that they were trying to attack the Cowboys, they were able to make some adjustments. And I will say, like, it does feel like good that the Cowboys were able to make those adjustments and kind of shake things loose in the latter part of the game. You would have liked to see that happen earlier, but I think, honestly, they just didn't get enough looks to kind of figure out everything early.
I went back and looked 5 plays in the first quarter of this game for the offense. 5.
I mean, it's crazy.
Now we'll talk about why they only had 5 plays in just a little bit, but I did want to mention the running game because I'm sure we'll talk about Dak Prescott. Javonte Williams, 18 carries for 97 yards. He had that 30-yard touchdown, which if you put like the over-under on longest rushing touchdown for Javonte Williams this year, I might have said like 9.5 over on FanDuel. But no, a 30-yard rushing touchdown. He also caught 6 passes out of the backfield. Javonte Williams is not, Saquon Barkley. He's not Jahmyr Gibbs, but he's been a pretty good running back through 2 games for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, 3 touchdowns in 2 games. We talked about it averaging well over 5 yards a carry this game. I didn't get a chance to see what his success rate numbers were, but I mean, he had over a 50% success rate game last week. I don't know if it was that 80%. High this game.
80%.
Really, was 80%? Oh,
80% last week. I think this week was like 45. I'll double check. So it was still above average, right?
So yeah, and I think that's what you're looking for: efficiency from this running game, and then to be able to break a 30-yard touchdown run like that, I think was just a culmination of the kind of dinks and dunks that he was getting throughout the game, and then eventually the tackling started to get worse. And I think that's what helped with the Cowboys run game, especially as it wore on. It felt like the Cowboys offensive line kind of struggled to get movement, and they kept at it. And then you started to see the Giants get worn down a little bit, not only in their run fits, but even when they were bouncing off of running backs and not able to make the tackles. Miles Sanders got into it a little bit as well with getting in there with the touchdown. So yeah, just an efficient run game to kind of go with this passing attack, I think, is what you're looking for. And I think that's what you've gotten so far with Williams. Now, if you can add another explosive element to it, I think you may have.
And we'll see if Jaden Blue can eventually be that answer, right? If probably not this week, but second half of the year, whenever he comes into this offense, it'll be interesting to see what he can add. Real quick on Dak Prescott. Yeah. I thought he struggled in the first half and in the first drive of the third quarter where he threw the interception. And then he was fantastic in overtime, in fourth quarter and overtime, made the plays that he needed to make. He used his legs to set up the game-winning field goal. He was aggressive in the right spots. He was throwing the ball down the field. Just got to get him off to a little quicker starts like he did last week. But outside of the first half, brilliant.
Yeah, and it wasn't even that he was like necessarily terrible in the first half. It just felt like it was a lot of bad opportunities, some bad looks at a couple of different points. It felt like he was borderline getting into the kind of situation where he was forcing it a little bit.
Well, I think a good example is like that George Pickens ball he threw to the pylon. It just had way too much air and it wasn't far enough, so it allowed the safety to get in there and just mess up the timing. Like if you're going to throw a ball to George Pickens, like
put it up and
away. Throw it way up so nobody else can get it, or throw it to the back pylon so the safety can't get there. It was a lot of that little stuff. Or like right before half, throwing the ball to Ferguson for 3 yards. and not getting out of bounds. You can't even set up a field goal. Like just little miscues that aren't awful by themselves. But I thought they added, but again, he played so good in the second half that I don't want to kill him for that.
Last thing. Yeah. He just needs to tighten up the simple throws, right? You and I were talking about the throws to the flat, the screen pass that just felt like it drifted. It fell to the floor too early. Those are passes you got to put on the receiver so that they can make moves right away. It just felt like Dak was just a little bit discombobulated earlier. And then as the game went on, he became lights out Dak like we were used to seeing.
All right, let's talk about the Cowboys defense because we have to. Not great, Landon. We will get to them next. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. And with football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. It's quick, it's easy, and honestly, it's my favorite way to follow football on Sundays. I love checking the projections on like Sunday morning to see like how many passing yards Josh Allen could go more or less than. It's so much fun. So download the Prize Picks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Landon, let's talk about the Cowboys defense. They stopped the run pretty well, 21 carries for 84 yards. Like, hey, listen, positive. They've done a much better job stopping the run.
That's all we got to talk about, right? That's all we got to mention is that we can just move on from there, right?
They gave up one big run to Cam Scatterbo, which was 24 yards. But outside of that, 20 carries for 60 yards for the Giants.
Yeah, look, I mean, clearly with the Parsons situation, we've traded one problem for another at this point, right? Like the run defense has been pretty decent. Like I think you don't feel like you're, the number one run defense in the NFL, but you are not anywhere near embarrassing yourself at this point, which is great. The pass rush has become a problem, and thereby the coverage has also become a problem. I think that a lot. Let's talk about the weird phenomenon of what happened in the first quarter because we talked about it a lot. But it wasn't just a case that the Giants were possessing the ball and doing a good job of creating first downs. I mean, that certainly was part of it. It was the addition of the fact that the Giants kept on shooting themselves in the foot. And so they kept on getting more opportunities. And they, I think I saw at one point that you tweeted that through 2 possessions, Russell Wilson had 110
so on the first drive Russell Wilson had 95 passing yards on the first drive of the game.
Which seems theoretically impossible, but when you have penalties, that's how it works, right? So what that meant
led to a field goal, by the way.
It was 12 plays for 3 points. It was 9 minutes. But the point being is that that was exhausting, right? At the very least, it was exhausting for the defense. And then on top of that, it felt like that set the tone for the game. But beyond that, it just felt like the Cowboys secondary specifically was having communication problems, right? There was just too many times that we saw that same Wandale play up the seam where he was in the slot and he was kind of doing a stop and then getting back up the field, and it just felt like no one was covering him. And then it felt like they ran some more of that stuff with Neighbors, and it just felt, I don't know if this was a situation where you missed your starting nickel back, and maybe there was some miscommunication there. There was definitely some cases where, you're playing Malik Neighbors and he's Malik Neighbors. And there's, there was certainly, especially the go ahead touchdown that the Giants scored near the end of the game, right? With Malik Neighbors. That just was a good player to good player play. But it did feel like, the combination of miscommunication on the back end with the fact that the Cowboys could not seem to get a solid pass rush at any point, really, really kind of doomed them throughout this game.
So on the first drive, if you add in the penalties, right? Because again, you play these full plays and there's penalties at the end of them. The Giants' first drive was 20 plays. 20 plays. And, that's you usually on defense, you'll play about 60 plays or so, and maybe even sometimes less than that in a single game. You had 20 on that first drive. And by the time we got to the second half, they were just done. And they looked incredibly slow on defense. And I think the other part that's scary is there was just guys that had wide open receivers across the field, and it's 3rd and 25, and Russell Wilson's having guys running wide open down the seam. It was compared to what we saw last week, where Philadelphia scored on their first 3 drives of the game, touchdowns, but it wasn't like big coverage bust. They had to kind of nickel and dime their way down the field. That wasn't it. Russell Wilson was just having guys open all game, and I think that's the concerning part. Is this defense going to get better anytime soon? Is Deron Bland that important to your secondary that you can't even function without him?
Yeah, and it's also just, again, seemed like another game where they played a whole bunch of zone, right? And they
96% zone.
That's a whole bunch. I think that obviously there's a lot of mixing it up, and they do play a whole bunch of different kinds of zone, right? But it clearly, when they were rushing 4 and they were dropping guys and just playing eyes coverage behind it, guys weren't where they were supposed to be. And it felt like there was just too many times where, look, I don't care what zone coverage you're running. The safety has to be deeper than the deepest guy on the offense, right?
Yeah,
and there's just so many times that we saw that wasn't the case. And whether there was a miscommunication, whether you're running inverted 2 or something, and maybe the corner's the one who's supposed to be the deepest player in that snap. Okay, great. But it was very clear that they were, busting coverages in very basic rudimentary ways. And that the Giants were exploiting those situations multiple times, right? It wasn't even just we saw Wan'Dale Robinson beat them in the seam once. You got a couple of them. The big one down the 50-yard one that was really back-breaking on a 3rd and 20 plus. The touchdown, there was just so many of those that just felt like, man, we just saw them got beat on this play, and here we go again.
I think the thing that is so discouraging for me is that not only did they give up 500 yards of offense and that they give up 37 points to the Giants at home, it's that this was the worst offensive line that you're going to face all year. No Andrew Thomas. God. James Hudson got benched after, the second drive, which
we could do a whole segment on James Hudson and that whole situation. Yeah. Again, it's the Giants played terribly. Right? They had all these penalties. They kept on shooting themselves in the foot. They were missing both of their starting tackles and their third tackle after self-immolated himself basically in the first drive. And they still played that way. It's maddening. It really is.
And I think that's the concern for me. If you're not creating pass rush, we could all excuse it last week against Philadelphia's offensive line because it's that Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson, but when it's Marcus Mbow and Jermaine Illuminor that are shutting down all of your pass rushers and you're not able to get wins up front, I think that's why it was so concerning. And honestly, I think that's why Jadaveon Clowney signed in the 4th quarter of this game, is because I think the Cowboys were we can't go through a season, even in a season where we might not be a Super Bowl contender. We have to have a viable pass rush. And what we saw out there wasn't it. And I think this is what my concern when we talked about the pass rush this offseason. We love the depth of this team when you had Micah Parsons at the top, right? Because everybody else is filling in their roles. Without Micah Parsons, everybody is having to go up a rung. And you just don't have that guy that you can that you trust to win in one-on-one situations. I don't even know who their best pass rusher is on the team right now. Honestly, I don't even know if I could rank the top 3. It just depends on any given snap.
And at a certain point, you need Eberflus to recognize that too, and know that Clowney is not the solution necessarily by himself. The Cowboys need to start blitzing more, and they need to kind of find a way. They have to.
You're already giving up big plays in the passing game. You might as well send some pressure just to create some chaos. And to their credit, they did it in overtime. And it actually impacted Russell Wilson a little bit. He threw the ball backwards 14 yards, and then he threw it in, and then you got an interception. Like, I think you're going to have to live and die by the blitz this year.
Yeah, and you certainly just need to be. And look, they seem to have done it well at times when they've done it, so they just need to do it a little bit more, and hopefully they will.
All right, let's talk about that big signing that the Cowboys made on Sunday afternoon. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. We all turn to some funny places for advice, whether it's your barista, your barber, or maybe some random stranger in the bathroom. Gosh, I hope that's not the case. But not everyone is the right one when it comes to real support. And that's why BetterHelp is here. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 10 years of experience, BetterHelp helps you find the right match, someone who is clinically trained and credentialed to guide you through life's challenges. I know for me, I've caught myself venting to people that maybe don't always have my best interest in mind. And that is where BetterHelp is the right people for you. It's flexible. You can join sessions online from your home or on the go, which makes therapy easy to fit into your busy schedule. And as the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Find the one with BetterHelp, and our listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. This episode is brought to you by Upside. Hey, Locked On Cowboy fans, are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or go to Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use our limited time promo code Touchdown to get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just by buying the gas that you already needed. At first, I thought this was too good to be true. It's totally legit, and real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes. So don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now by using our limited time promo code Touchdown for a limited time 25 cents per gallon bonus. That is promo code Touchdown. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast. 2 shows every single day. 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's talk about Jadaveon Clowney, who the Cowboys signed on Sunday afternoon. Jerry Jones announced it right after the game. What can he provide to this defense?
Yeah, just a veteran presence, a guy who's going to be kind of, hopefully similar to Fowler level pass rusher, but with a much better kind of high end on the run game. He's going to be he's a bigger guy, and maybe you can also, if you need to, reduce him down a little bit and he can play inside a little bit. So yeah, a guy with big bodied, long levered guy, not quite the athlete obviously that he was, in his prime, but he's a technician at this point in his career. He understands how to use his body well, and he's got the type of body that is valuable on the edge. You can hold the edge on the run. It can also press the pocket, especially against some of these guys like the Hurtses of the world, where you don't necessarily want to fully beat the corner. You just want to press the pocket down into him a little bit. I think he'll be useful like that. He can get his hands up, knock passes down. Just adding another veteran presence, some stability to the pass rush, which I think they sorely needed.
He's just a better player than Fowler because he's a better athlete than what Fowler is. He's stronger. He can help actually stop against the run. And honestly, that's been the best part of his game the last couple of years. Is I think you've seen some of the athleticism go now that he's in his 30s, but he's still so powerful and he can drive a tackle back and just create more chaos. You're still looking for somebody that can be the guy that can move with speed around the edge, but I trust him more than just about any other defensive end they have on the roster. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's like Mosher Nealand and Jadaveon Clowney on first and second down. Third downs is maybe when you bring in Fowler, you can cut his snaps down a little bit. But honestly, Landon, I'm wondering if James Houston isn't just their best pass rusher. He's the only guy that has any kind of counter, any kind of moves. I'm curious to see how they fit Clowney into their rotation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's how you laid it out. Sounds right. And I think they feel like the speed rusher element is what they'll get in the development of their younger guys, right? That's what they need to continue. And Fowler, right? Is Fowler kind of adds an element of that, but they needed another one of these body types just to kind of, I mean, first of all, reduce the snaps of your smaller lightweight guys on the early downs. And then I think that will thereby help their other snaps, right? When they're pass rushers, because they'll, be kind of more in the rotation they're used to. But this clearly the numbers that we're talking about is probably what they were thinking about when Parsons was here anyway. So that it just kind of that they can make that part of it work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
And again, we're still waiting for some details on the contract, but Jerry Jones said it's more than a 1-year deal. I can't believe it's more than 2 because of Jadaveon Clowney's age. Also because he never stays with the team beyond 1 year. And I think it was John Machota that it said it's a very team-friendly deal. We'll see. My guess is it's very incentive-based. But I do think the Cowboys needed it. It gives you somebody else that you can throw into your rotation. And again, if you can get a viable, decent pass rush, I will say I thought the run defense was much better. Like I was kind of joking about that up top, but it does seem like the run defense is better. It sounds crazy, but you're not that far away from having an average NFL defense.
Can we just talk about something real quick before we go? Because we're running out of time. We didn't really mention Butter Aubrey, but I mean, how can you not love the guy? I mean, honestly, just to have that in your pocket. As soon as they completed that ball to Ferguson on the 50, like at the end of the regulation, I knew we were playing overtime.
But you know what's crazy is like it's a 64-yard field goal, and not once was I worried about whether he was going to get it there. You're always worried about the accuracy, but what a weapon to have. And we talked about this with the new kickoff rules. Like Brandon Aubrey, one of the more valuable players in the league because of his strength. That is it for today's show. Check us out on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Enjoy your Victory Monday. We'll see you right back here on Tuesday.